Alright, so in this video, we'll be talking about the debounce technique, where debounce is used and how it works. And at the end, we'll be making an example using JavaScript and HTML. So here is an example of how the debounce work. Let's suppose we have an HTML input, and every time a user type a character, we have to make a request to the server. So in this case, when we type hello and then space, we'll be having 5 API calls. Instead, we could wait until the user stop writing so we can make the API call. This can be useful in case where the API call is expensive, which means if it is time consuming or if it consumes a lot of computational power. So this is an example where we can use the debounce technique. So in this example, we have a HTML and also JavaScript that listen to the size of the window. So whenever we are dragging the size, we'll see a log debounce. But as you can see, as we resize, we'll have a multiple logs. And logging is simple, but if the function it should execute is time consuming or it is computational expensive, at some point the browser can even start lagging. So we'll be using a debounce technique to make the call only when we stop dragging the window like this. When we stop, we can log. But if we removed it, now we can see again that we have multiple logs. So let me show you the code so you can understand better how these work. So we have an HTML here, which is just a simple HTML that has a header and a paragraph. And also we have a JavaScript here called script.js, which is this thing. We have a function called log, and also we are listening to the window. Whenever it resizes, it just call that function. So that's why whenever we resize the windows, we are having a log debounce. But as we said, this is not efficient for some cases. So how can we apply the debounce here? We'll be declaring another function called debounce. I'll explain this later. And here we have to put the debounce, our function, which receives a function and a delay. The function will be this or this. So let's cut it and call the debounce, pass the function, and then the delay. And in this case, we will put 300 milliseconds. So now let me explain you this function, the function debounce. So instead of calling directly the console log or the main function that should be run, we declare another function called debounce, passing that function, which is the main function, in a delay. So the function debounce takes an argument, a function and a delay, because it should run the function after a delay using the function set timeout. As you can see, set timeout, the function, and also the delay. And since this function will return a timer, we save it in a variable called timer. So let timer, in the beginning, this timer will be undefined, but then as we call it for the first time, it will be set here. But also we need to clear the timer if the timer was set previously. So we know that this function log will be called a bunch of time in a short time. That's why we need this function debounce to eliminate the previously called function. So for example, if you have two calls of this log within a 300 millisecond range, normally we should have the first call which logs debounce and then the second call which logs debounce. But since the second call is called before the first call is executed because of this timer, because every function will be called after 300 seconds, the previous timer will be cleared, so there will be no call anymore, and we will only have the second call remaining. So that's why instead of these two calls, we will have only one call. This is how the debounce function works. So whenever the function is called, we'll set a timer for that function to be executed. But within that range, if we have another call of that function, we'll basically kill that timer and set it again. Now let's see the result. And you can see whenever we stop, because we'll have a bunch of calls and those previous calls will be killed and it remains only the last call.